Hello, juniors. Welcome to part A of this week's remote learning. So I will post part A and part B at the same time. That way you can get it all done during our class time. So remember, as a classwork assignment, this will be due within our 3-hour period. So if you have a problem with that, just send me an email. All right, let's get started. So the topic for this week is the fourth commandment: honor your father and your mother. Sounds pretty straightforward, right? Wrong. This applies to a lot of different areas in our life. So let's get going. We can read CCC's 2197 through 2243 to find more information. All right, so you're going to see our objectives in green, and that's going to be the subject of part A. So right now we're going to name and describe the fourth commandment. We will be able to explain how the fourth commandment acts as a bridge to the other commandments. We will explain the importance of family in God's plan. We will name the sins against the fourth commandment, and we will list ways to honor the fourth commandment. So, as our introduction, the first 3 commandments focus on love of God. The last 7 focus on love of neighbor. So the fourth commandment prepares the faithful to love our neighbor by first teaching us how to love those closest to us, our families. It's a bridge. So think of it this way. Love trickles down from God because he's the source. So he loves our parents because they're older than us, so they get there first. So he loves the people of the world. And with that love, our parents are able to love us. And part of that love is discipline. So we are learning by being a member of a family how to interact with others, because our first experience of God is really through our parents. And then part B, but I'll give you the introduction part now. The fourth commandment extends beyond our families to all forms of legitimate authority. And that would be any person or institution that is responsible for your care and well-being. So teachers, babysitters, etc. So the biblical view on the family. Here are the biblical foundations of family in God's plan. Extended family was considered the central social institution. Many generations resided in the same household. You're probably experiencing that now if you live with grandma or you live with cousins, etc. But in biblical times, the family was the center of everything. The family roles were clearly defined. Father earned a living as the head of the household. The mother managed the household. She was in charge of the day-to-day operations, so to speak. She was considered subordinate to the husband. But I think we've had this conversation before. We don't want to put too much stock in the idea that a woman was subordinate to her husband, because it doesn't mean that she was a slave. To be subordinate means you simply to submit to that person's authority. So in big life-changing decisions, the father was the one who made the call, but that doesn't mean that he did it alone. The wife was a trusted, loved consultant on all matters, great and small. At least if you wanted a happy household, that's the way it went. Children obeyed their parents. That's the way it's still supposed to be. And sons traditionally adopted their father's trade. So right here you can see this beautiful painting of Saint Joseph teaching Jesus the trade of carpentry. Biblical view on the family continued. Parents passed on the teachings of the covenants and the law. It was a parent's responsibility to make sure that their students knew who God was and knew what the 10 Commandments were and all of the teachings of the Hebrew faith. Besides respect to God, respect for and loyalty to one's family was the strongest value in biblical times. So we have some Old Testament passages that teach us how to honor parents, and I'm going to just flop on over to this doozy right here. You're going to love this. Okay, Proverbs chapter 30, verse 17. The eye that mocks the father or scorns the homage due a mother will be plucked out by brook ravens, devoured by a brood of vultures. So if that doesn't tell you how important it is to honor your parents, nothing will. So basically what it means is that if you are disrespectful to your mother or father, then God has every right to send down ravens to pluck out your eyeballs. So just sit with that for a while. But there is more to it. It's theoretical. Not theoretical, it's figurative. It is saying that it is an incredibly important duty that we be respectful to our parents. All right, so now Jesus comes along. Jesus was obedient to his earthly parents. He was not a rebellious teenager. He never said, I hate you, Joseph, you're not my real dad. No, he was obedient to his earthly mother and father. He introduced a radical understanding, though, of the fourth commandment. If we were to read Mark chapter 3, which I encourage you to do, you would hear the story of Jesus preaching to people, and then somebody comes in and says, Jesus, your mother and your brothers are out there looking for you. And Jesus sort of goes to the crowd and says, well, who are my mother and my brothers? He's saying that everybody there were his mother and brothers. In other words, we're all part of a spiritual family. Loyalty to God is more important than blind loyalty to one's blood relatives. So in other words, if a conflict between love of God and love of love of family were to arise, God is always going to be more important. The new law taught by Jesus does not contradict the fourth commandment. Rather, it helps us to understand its true meaning. Remember, our parents are our first experience of what it's like to love others, and they're our first experience of God. So in honoring our parents, we are really honoring God, and vice versa. We are called to respect and honor our parents and other family. We are called to respect and honor our parents and other family members because we are all part of God's family. Honoring parents. On the surface, it is very easy to understand what the fourth commandment means. It means that we have to respect and honor our parents. But Jesus' interpretation teaches us that parents also have a responsibility to love and respect their children. Teachings on the roles that parents and children have towards one another can be found in all of these wonderful passages. But I want to move on to this portion. So this is very important. We have 4 attitudes that lead to honoring parents: respect, gratitude, obedience, and assistance. So take that time. Let's do a little Dora the Explorer. Say that with me. Respect, gratitude, obedience, and assistance. So what is respect? Respect is the foundation of any healthy relationship. If you are in a relationship with somebody, be it parents, siblings, friends, or romantic or otherwise, if there is not respect, that relationship is going to crumble. Or at the very least, it's a relationship that's going to cause you a lot of strife. Respect is something that comes naturally to us when we feel loved and respected by our parents. When they show it to us, it becomes very easy to show it to them back as well as to other people. Mutual respect between parents and kids, though, becomes challenging as children develop desires and beliefs that are different than those of their parents. So if you think back to times where you started to believe differently than your parents, there was some tension there. So it becomes challenging. And if we don't address those challenging times with love and respect and open honesty, we're gonna have some questions that are gonna need answering. So it's really important that when we find ourselves in disagreement with our parents, that we handle that very carefully. All right, gratitude. Gratitude means that we have to appreciate the sacrifices that are made by our parents, even though they're obligated to make them. I want you to think of all of the things that your mother and father or whoever it is that loves you and takes care of you, all the sacrifices that they have to make. Now, they have to make them. They're obligated to feed you, to put a roof over your head, and to provide you with the care that you need for your body and your mind. They have to do that. But when we don't say thank you, when we don't show appreciation, even without saying thank you and show it in other ways, it hurts. It is really hard to be happy when nothing that you do goes noticed. And I'm sure you know what that feels like. So you may have obligations at home, like you have to show your parents respect. You have to go to school. You have to try and do reasonably well. Even if you work your tail off out of an obligation to your parents, it sucks when nobody acknowledges it. So I want you to think about that the next time your parents do something for you. Find daily opportunities to express thanks for providing you with what you need to grow physically, spiritually, and mentally. Again, yes, they are obligated to do those things, but life becomes really hard and daunting when nobody notices the good that we do. So please be kind and grateful to your parents. Obedience. The fourth commandment requires that we listen to our parents with an open and patient attitude, doing our best to understand their point of view, even when we don't see their wisdom. And this is where it becomes really tricky. When we have no idea why our parents are making us do a certain thing, it's much easier to disobey that because we think we know better. But our parents are not obligated to share that wisdom. They are not required to tell us why they have instructed us to do certain things or why they've not allowed us to do other things. We simply have to trust that they do know what they're talking about. The only exception to the obedience requirement is when a parent, teacher, or other authority asks you to do something that you know goes against your duties towards God. So like the other slide said, in conflict between love of family and love of God is always more important. All right, so the 4 challenges to obedience: protesting, bargaining, delaying, and challenging. So let's try those together. Protesting, bargaining, delaying, and challenging. So protesting. Mom or dad asks you to do something and you just say no, or your version of no, whatever it is. And I love my grumpy cat there. Bargaining. You all are so good at bargaining sometimes, you need to relax a little bit. So look at my little picture of Puss in Boots there from Shrek. Those are the bargaining eyes. So this is the kind of scenario where you go and you start making deals with your parents. Oh, I'll do the laundry if you let me do blah, 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 blah. No, just do the laundry. Delaying. Yeah, I'll do it. Give me a couple minutes. Nope. And I really want you to think about that one. If you did everything you could to make somebody else's life easier. So let's say you get in a relationship with somebody that you love, you get married, and you try and make a nice home for them. You go to work 8 hours a day, 6 days a week, and then you just ask them to do this one little thing. Honey, can you take out the trash? And they say later. Then you ask them again, honey, can you please do this? Later. I want you to think of how unloved that would make you feel. When you delay people, you are telling them that what they want is unimportant. And that becomes very daunting after a while, and they start to themselves feel like they are unimportant to you. Not the task, but they themselves. So delaying it might seem harmless, but really it can have some very negative long-term damaging effects. And then finally, challenging. This is when we get a little uppity, when we get a little indignant at what our parents are saying to us. And we don't get it, so we're going to challenge it. We're going to do everything we can to make sure that we can get away with something. So look at that little picture at the bottom of the girl on the counter. She's arguing with her parents, and we are not supposed to do that. Again, it's about trust. Assistance. So this is the 4th attitude that leads us to honoring parents. It begins with regular chores and being helpful when called upon without complaining. It's really important that we minimize how often we complain about the things that we're asked to do. Again, because it's not a grateful attitude. This can include, we want to be helpful with babysitting, carrying groceries, cleaning things up, etc. As we grow, we are called to assist our aging parents and care for them in ways that they can no longer care for themselves. And that means giving them the moral and material support that they may need. And it's the circle of life. When you were young and vulnerable and helpless and couldn't take care of yourself, they took care of you. And there's going to be a point in their life where they become vulnerable and helpless, and we should be taking care of them. And it's a privilege to be able to do that. All right, so that is where we are going to stop part A, and I thank you for listening to this presentation, and there will be more to come in part B. Thank you.